Hello and welcome to Unit 2a, Momentum and its Conservation. Momentum is one of those ideas, perhaps one of the most important ideas in all of physics. As it relates to our everyday lives, we can see that there are issues around safety and cars and car crashes. It even is an important idea about rockets and space travel. It even governs how helicopters work, believe it or not. And you can see down here we have an athlete practicing parkour. It plays an important role in sports and athletic events as well. So when we look at momentum, there's several questions that we will answer by the time we are done. The first of them is, why do objects change their motion? What are the concepts that govern the change in the motion? And what are the rules and principles that govern the change in motion? And in terms of its relevance, we already alluded to this, and that relevance is, how does it affect our daily lives? We already saw some applications of that already, from safety to athletics to space travel. Well, the big context for momentum is motion. And we've already spent quite a bit of time studying one aspect of motion. And that aspect of motion is this question, relates to this question. What is the nature of the motion? What is the nature of the motion? And when it comes to what is the nature of the motion, we have found out that there are really two answers to that question. There's two types of motion that we're concerned about. And the first one of those is constant velocity, and the other is changing velocity. So motion, we can ask, what is the nature of the motion? And when we get the answer is either constant velocity or changing velocity. Well, we're now in Unit 2 embarking on a very different type of question. And that question is, why do objects move and change their motion? A very big difference. The question is why versus what. A far more interesting question. Now, the answer to that question comes down to two main laws. The first of these laws, and it may be the most important of all, is the law of conservation of momentum. The second of these laws you've probably all heard of before, and that is the law of conservation of energy. Now, there is a related idea, and that related idea is the idea of forces. Now, people talk about forces an awful lot, but it turns out in the universe, there's no real laws around forces. Forces can be used to explain what's going on with momentum or explain what's going on with conservation of energy. In fact, we might even say that forces are a made-up concept that is used as a tool to help explain the details of what's going on with the law of conservation of energy. And in fact, the whole idea of forces is a subset, or it's just a corollary to momentum, as we'll see. That all the ideas that we talk about with forces, and the main ideas that people talk about with forces, are Newton's laws. Well, they're not really laws they're actually not really separate laws. They're all just aspects of the law of conservation of momentum. But in any case, forces get used to explain the law of conservation of momentum, the law of conservation of energy, can help us do some detailing there. But the big idea underlying it all are these conservation laws. Now, those conservation laws are not the only ones. There are other conservation laws, like the law of conservation of mass. And there is another one called the law of conservation of electric charge. So you can see there that there are four conservation laws, and I drew that arrow extending sideways because there are more conservation laws out there. They really govern what's going on with the universe. Now, to step back from a larger scale, just to rehash what we just said, is that we are now embarking on this journey about why objects move and change their motion. There are two laws that govern them, the law of conservation of momentum and energy, and we are going to focus on the law of conservation of momentum in Unit 2a. And so that's what we're focusing on here in Unit 2a. And forces will come up in terms of explaining some of the details of the law of conservation of momentum. And there are other conservation laws. Now, as we go through this unit, we will first start off talking about a whole bunch of topics like inertia and mass and linear momentum and change in linear momentum and the rate of change in linear momentum. And we'll learn this idea called impulse. And so those are what we might say are definitions. And then we will move on and we will look at the law of conservation of momentum and apply it to a variety of examples. And then we will look at some other advanced topics. Other advanced topics and examples. So welcome to Unit 2a.